Trends in K-pop have come and gone. Some were good, some were bad, and some were downright questionable. They're all still amazingly memorable though, so let's look at the worst K-pop trends of the last decade. 2011. Okay, so can anyone explain what exactly was going on in 2011 that had nearly every K-pop idol sounding like they were singing in front of a fan? Idols aren't the first and will definitely not be the last artist to use autotune, as it's still heavily used today, but older fans can probably remember how big and obvious the autotune use was in 2010 and 2011. I'm just glad it's not as heavily used today, cause I'd get tired of every idol trying to sound like T-Pain. 2012. Bad hairstyles, I believe, are a rite of passage in K-pop. You'll see an idol have a very peculiar hairstyle at one point or another, so it's always better to be prepared for the next time you see your favorite idol and their hair looks like it was cut with kitchen scissors in a pitch black room. K-pop fans in 2012 lived their lives in fear in what ridiculous hairstyle their favorite idol would appear in. I mean, do y'all remember Kai's clip-on fringe? Or perhaps M-Black's Mean's weird braided mullet? Or even worse, and be prepared, Sunny's curly bob cut that seemed to change colors depending on her mood? I still wake up in the middle of the night covered in sweat just thinking about it. The dubstep break was basically a subgenre of K-pop in 2012. Hyuna is the one to introduce the dubstep break in 2011 with Bubble Pop, but as much as I love my girl, I think the trend took a very different turn. A new K-pop song would come out and it would be fine, great even. And then came the unnecessary dubstep part, most commonly accompanied with a dance break, and it would catch everybody off guard. I think I could even classify it as a jump scare. I'm thankful the trend ended just as quickly as it started because I don't think I'd be able to handle it in 2021. 2013. IU went viral in 2013, but it was all for the wrong reasons. On an episode of Night of TV Entertainment, IU revealed the diet plan that she had used to lose the weight she had gained from filming Belle Ami. She consumed 1 apple in the morning, 2 sweet potatoes for lunch, and a protein powder drink per day. It's very worrying, I know. But despite the fans' concern for how unhealthy the diet seemed, following it turned into a trend and even a challenge for idols and fans alike. People even follow it to this day. IU sought professional help, and after seeking treatment, she's getting much better at following the new, healthier eating rules she had imposed on herself, but this was definitely one of the worst trends ever. I mentioned the horrible hairstyles of this era of K-pop, but it would eat me alive if I didn't mention the rainbow hair trend because, oh boy, I am never forgiving Hyoyeon and Sehun for this. Did they make it look good somehow? Yes. Did I enjoy watching it become a trend amongst idols? Definitely not. It looked like their stylist had a coupon for hair colors that expired on that day, so they went all out on the hair. And the worst part about it, we all wanted rainbow hair back then too. 2014. Nothing says early 2010 fashion like wearing shorts over tight pants or leggings. Unfortunately, the trend reached the K-pop scene too. While girl group stans were safe during this era, fans of boy groups had to sleep with one eye open. From BtoB, Block B to EXO, everyone wanted to participate in the trend for some reason. Thank God the stylists finally came to their senses and stopped setting these boys up, with a few exceptions. We haven't complained about makeup trends yet, so better start now. What was up with the whole gradient lips trend? The whole technique of it has improved a lot since 2014, but why was it so important for the makeup artists to make female idols look like they have no lips whenever they went out in public? They did make it work out in the end because there's no makeup in the world that can make Irene look ugly, but at what cost? 2015. The Lolita concept isn't new to K-pop, and unfortunately, that also goes for utilizing schoolgirls and younger girls in general. This terribly disgusting phenomenon has existed since the dawn of time, but 2015 saw a surge of it in the K-pop scene. With IU being swept up in controversies about her album Shire having connection to the Lolita theme, other female idols became the target of criticism by netizens for playing with the same concept. Sulli was one of the idols who got bashed by netizens for having a Lolita-themed photo shoot. SM also got criticism for showing a then 16-year-old Yeti in a bikini in the music video for Red Velvet's Ice Cream Cake. Add that to all the innuendos in the English version, and it makes the whole thing weirder. Buying albums in bulk has become the norm for K-pop groups nowadays, but it was different back then. There were 2 versions of an album, and at most, there was a version for every member. Then SM decided to do the unthinkable, and if it's surprising to you now, imagine how EXO's felt back in 2015. They decided to release not 1, not 2, not even 3 versions of Exodus, but 20. I think this probably prompted other companies to take notes and release as many versions of one single album as they can to get the most amount of money with the least amount of work and reach the highest sales on the music charts. 2016. There's no denying that an issue with colorism exists within K-pop. It was around 2016 that whitewashed photos of idols became the norm. Entertainment companies, magazines, and other media outlets released and still release altered pictures all the time, and fan-taken pictures are often brightened to the point that idols blend in with the white background. It's actually disturbing, but despite the fact that this phenomenon hasn't gone away entirely, things have definitely improved since then. The first step was idols not using using that weird snow filter app that made them look transparent. I'm gonna count that as a win for us. Let's discuss the weird grudge SM stylists have against the artists, because I have no other explanation for the styling during NCT's fire truck era. You could call it experimental and innovative and androgynous, but I call it randomized Sims outfits. All jokes aside, putting a bunch of pretty boys in those clothes should be considered a crime. But bad styling or not, some of the outfits paved the way for the overused e-boy style, which boy groups follow to this day and that everyone is probably tired of seeing. So can we conclude that NCT were ahead of their time with this one, or not? 2017. Female idols have always struggled with the fact that their stylists couldn't care less about their safety or comfort, but 2017 was a particularly bad year and Irene of Red Velvet was the main victim of it. For example, when Red Velvet were performing at the 2017 Golden Disc Awards, they put Irene in a sweater dress that kept riding up while she was performing. Or does anyone remember that one Red Flavor performance where she pulled down her dress 9 times? Terrible. Apparently other stylists decided to follow in their footsteps, but they didn't draw the line of performances only, but award shows too, as idols like Sana and Lisa were put in dresses that you can barely climb the stairs in. Definitely not a cool trend. 2018. Technically, I know that K-pop idols didn't invent dabbing, but I had to include it here because the era still gives me nightmares. You couldn't get through one performance or an interview without idols dabbing randomly. Groups like Monsta X and Twice even included them in their official choreography. I mean, that was definitely a choice. Tropical house is one of those trends that were cute at first, but definitely overstayed their welcome. A few tropical songs here and there were fine, but there came a time where you couldn't escape these types of songs. The genre just isn't versatile enough to handle the huge amount of songs and keep it interesting at the same time, so every song started to sound the same at some point. Lucky for us, not only did this trend end in K-pop, but it's faded out of Western pop as well, which is great because not every song needed to sound like a Kygo track. 2019. Remember where you'd go under any tweet and you'd see a random fan cam attached under it? Tweets about sports, news, weather, pics of cute dogs. If you check the replies to any tweet during this time, you'd see a fan cam and Stan XYZ written above it. It was annoying at first, but then it became downright disgusting as people started replying with fan cams to serious news and tweets. We can thankfully consider this trend done, but it caused big damage for the time it existed. You thought the horrible hair trends were over with the second gen? Well, do I have some wonderful news for you. The mullet trend came back in full force after idols like BTS's Taehyung and EXO's Baekhyun did them right. But again, just because there's nothing these idols can do to look ugly doesn't mean we have to see everyone else do it. I can't pretend to like it on everyone. 2020. Just like colorism, cultural appropriation has always existed as a problem in the K-pop industry. Within K-pop, there's blackface, mouthing or saying racial slurs, and purely aesthetic uses of black culture and hairstyles are still common, but 2020 seemed to be a pretty bad year when it came to this. After posting pictures of her getting the braids done, Hyuna was met with backlash from fans calling her out for cultural appropriation. Jaehee from Weekly was also criticized for saying she wanted to try out reggae hair. Hongjoon from ATEEZ was also under fire for wearing cornrows for the Title No. 2 album, and even though the company apologized, the hair wasn't edited out of the content. But these things have already happened back in 2017 when Sunny made a big mistake and wore dreads. It is true that cultural training has started to become a thing in the industry, but there's still a long way to go before we can avoid instances like this again. 2021. With TikTok rising in popularity over the last 2 years, entertainment companies have started to pick up on how important the app is for marketing. In order for companies to get the most clout and listeners, they're incorporating simple dance moves that TikTokers could do so that they can make a challenge out of it. Yup, fully trained dancers are being made to channel their inner Addison Rae. It just reminds me of when idols were doing the shoot dance and the floss everywhere. I mean, it's a good strategy, I have to give it to them. And let's close this video with the worst of the worst trends of this year: noise music. I can't pinpoint exactly when basically every song sounded like the producer shoved a fork into a garbage disposal and slapped some vocals on top of it, but I'm not the biggest fan of it. Just like with the tropical house trend, the first few times we heard noise music was interesting, then everything started sounding the same. Whether they have the same producer or are copying the notes from each other, I have no idea, but they better come up with some new stuff because every trend has its limits. And that's the end. Which one do you consider the worst trend in K-pop and why? I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye!